Good afternoon, everybody. Let's see, let's get a timestamp as I usually do. It's February 26th. Historically, what's happening today? What is the context? Well, in my own local universe, we did some crushing of C60, and what I'm going to do on the screen as I talk a little bit, short video, is page through my C60 crushing pictures, which I just acquired yesterday. More globally, the U.S. president, as understood, is in Vietnam, a nation state that the U.S. was formerly at war with. So ostensibly, it's about getting better relations with North Korea, but really the whole history of the United States in Southeast Asia and Asia in general is something to think about here. Which brings me to my topic, globalism. I think there's an assumption we were going to have an international, a globalist versus nationalist debate somewhere along the line. I think Bannon was going to set that up. I don't mean me personally necessarily. I just mean the battle lines were drawn. But then did we ever really have that debate? For example, does a globalist, by definition, seek one world government? I would say no. I would say the globalist, at least the type of globalist I am, is more of a cybernetics person. I believe in self-organization. And I believe that cybernetics and synergetics kind of went out of business together, not because they fizzled for lack of intelligence, but because they were threatening. So what I think about is, for example, nations that don't make the cut and they don't have a huge contiguous landmass the way some privileged nations do. I'm thinking of Tibet, for example, and I think of all the temples I've been to, all the shrines and so forth. I think of those as campus facilities somewhat linking together in a network, a global nation that was of necessity or by forced to disperse, a diaspora. And I feel we have a lot of diaspora nations. I also feel that corporations are on the verge of being nations in many ways. They have huge budgets in some cases. They engage in vast undertakings similar to what an army would undertake in Roman times, building of roads and so forth. These are the corporations. They have their logos, which are like flags, and they too are dispersed around the globe in many cases. And so the status quo that we have now is not so simple as just nations. It's something with many overlays and many levels, and I feel like a globalist is more of a realist in being okay with talking about those levels and the fact that there is no one world government, nor are we necessarily interested in such a thing or, quote, a new world order. The order is always changing. It's always new. It's new, it's new, it's new. It's like, that's not interesting either. So speaking as a globalist, but not for all globalists, I would say, A, it's not about rich oligarch billionaires controlling the world and integrating their power as some kind of Illuminati. I don't think that's what globalism has to mean. I think it could mean thousands of virtual nations more accepted into the family of nations, and we don't all get the privilege of a huge contiguous landmass that we can say this is my nation and see it on a map. It's more like a smattering of dots, and there are lots of dot networks out there, and I'm saying let's have a lot of virtual nations. They're not that virtual. You can go to a campus facility, you can stay in an apartment. There's like lots of ways to create a sense of loyalty to a company, but also to a nation, which could have higher ideals than simply making profits for shareholders or something like that. So as a globalist, here I am proposing that we have more nations than ever in the future, not less. And that's, I think, something people don't usually think is a possibility, and so I thought it would be worth my time to present that possibility. What else about globalism? It's not that nations disappear, it's that once we have a more expansive understanding of networks and diaspora nations and so on, we're not as hung up on the ones that we have. We don't think which of the few nations that we have now has got to rule the roost and be the empire. See, here's the paradox. I think that once you're locked into what I'll call a nationalist mindset, then you're going to rank the nations in order of power, and you're going to look for ways to think of which nations rule. And you become much more of a world government sort of advocate than a globalist. Instead of the cybernetic distribution of power, you're thinking that there's superpowers and that there's some sort of collaboration of nations and alliance that's supposed to run the world and things like that. That to me is how nationalists think. So it is a one world government sort of approach, much more so than the cybernetic, synergetic, globalists approach that I favor. So let that sink in if it's interesting at all, and I'll talk more sometime about these crushing experiments, which were very interesting to me, but I'm not a structural engineer. I was not the one taking the measurements, nor am I the person who's designing this product. My role this day was to give more history, connecting these artifacts to earlier artifacts such as by Alexander Graham Bell, if you're familiar with American history at all. All right, that's enough chatter for today. I'm on a short schedule, a tight schedule, so hopefully this was a glitch-free recording, and I can just put it on YouTube as my thoughts for the day. Talk to you later.